I think I can safely say that Dr. Han Suyin is a legend in her own time. Not that she's that old, but she's a woman of incredible charm and beauty. She's a woman who is a living expert on China. She has been involved in every aspect of China.
Not an expert.
She has written some wonderful books, the most famous of which was A Many Splendid Thing. Is that correct?
Thank you, Jack, for having it right. Usually people say love is a many splendid thing. No. That was the film.
That was the name of the movie.
Yes.
But A Many Splendid Thing. And she's here, of all things, because she's written another book called The Enchantress, breathtaking new novel. But I want to talk to you about some other things as well.
Yes.
When you look at China today, Han Suyin, do you see a country which is, really fantastically different from the Mao Zedong's China which you knew and learned about?
Fantastically different from the old China I knew, Jack. You see, everybody now, because they have short memories, compares with Mao Zedong. To me, Mao Zedong brought China from the 10th century into the 20th. He couldn't go further. He also made some mistakes. But the great things that he did for China will remain eternally with us. He really, without him, there would not have been the possibility to do what is being done today. And so, even though in his old age he did commit mistakes and he went, well, even senile, we must not forget that without him, we would probably be satellites of Russia, or we would be back with the warlords. We would be worse than Latin America. Oh no, it's not with the Mao Zedong period we must compare. It's with old China, the old China where 1 million to 3 million people died every year of hunger, but nobody cared. Nobody even, people took it for granted. That's the China I came from, the old China. My family has been serving China for 800 years as mandarins. We have a tradition, and our tradition is we serve China. We don't serve isms, but we serve China, because China is China. And it doesn't matter if you have to be communist even to serve China properly and to do something. So therefore, you see, Jack, that's our background.
But you were also married to, in fact, an officer of shall I say, that dreadful man, Chiang Kai-shek?
But only because Chiang Kai-shek suddenly, because he had been kidnapped by the communists, turned around and agreed to make a united front with them. Do you know what happened in December 1936 when the Japanese had already been invading China, Jack? Chiang Kai-shek was giving in to them. And it was Mao Zedong and Zhou Enlai who captured Chiang Kai-shek, and instead of putting him to death, said to him, now look, the country comes first. You killed 1 million of us. You have been hounding us all over the place. The Long March was due to this hounding, but let's make a deal. Let's get together to fight the country because China comes first. And because they did that, Jack, I never saw, and many people like myself, never saw the communists as ists. We saw them as nationalists. And this is why I married a man who afterwards, after I married him, became an officer in Chiang Kai-shek's army. And for some years, I believed that, yes, they were fighting for China. Until I realized with my own eyes, I saw them preparing for the next civil war and not fighting the Japanese. The only people who fought the Japanese were the communists. So, of course, all of us non-communist intellectuals, we sympathized with the communists, quite frankly. My whole university did.
How bad, or how serious, or how wrong were the Americans when they recognized and dealt with Chiang Kai-shek as against and dealing with Zhou Enlai and Mao Zedong? That must have been the world's greatest diplomatic mistake.
Well, it's very difficult for me being Chinese and having what I call Chinese discretion. If you will notice, I never criticize any other country. Non-interference is my motto, not through fear, but because I'm afraid of making mistakes. Yes, it was a mistake because Mao Zedong had, in 1947 already, told the Dixie mission. It was a mission of American experts and military people who had gone to Yan'an to see Mao Zedong. He told them, only America can help China modernize. You see, this idea of today, modernization and opening, was already there in 1947. And he said that to them, And unfortunately, after that came McCarthy, came the idea that Russia and China were all the same, and so on and so forth, when it was very clear that Mao Zedong always detested Stalin and Stalin detested Mao.
But there's something else worries me about the new China. What little we know about the new China. We read little bits in the Globe and Mail, little bits in the New York Times. It would seem that China is on the road to becoming, I'll overstate this, a carbon copy of the United States with Coca-Cola and Diet Pepsi and free enterprise and franchises and multimillionaires and social injustices which they were trying to wipe out.
Jack, you're very perceptive and you are saying things which are also being said in China. Now, my feeling is this one because, as you will see when you read The Enchantress, I'm something of a historian. You cannot have 5,000 years of history without knowing that China has been invaded and conquered by many foreigners, and lo and behold, within 5-10 years, they've been Sinicized. What China has done, even during these 30 years under Mao, has been to Sinicize Marxism, to turn it to adapt to Chinese conditions. Not very successfully, not very well, but then when you make an experiment, you're always making mistakes at first. And what I think they are doing is make what the Chinese genius has always done. The Chinese genius is not analytic. It's synthesis. They've always put things together. I think the Chinese will be the first people in the world to put capitalism and socialism together and to work out what they call Chinese socialism. Now, I never quarrel with isms because I don't know what they mean. I'm stupid, you see. I'm quite stupid about it. But I know that when Hong Kong was accepted as being two systems, one country, two systems, I said, there you are. China is going to do the same all over China.
I suppose that is the highest shining example of Chinese pragmatism.
And of British wisdom. I was very happy. I love the British. I'm sorry, perhaps this is not right in British Columbia to say it.
No, it's quite allowed, I think, providing you say it in French.
All right, I'll say it in French. J'aime beaucoup les Anglais. Yes, my French friends do not forgive me for perhaps sometimes preferring as my boyfriends English people too.
Right.
But let's leave that.
But you love the British and you...
I do. I love the British. I get on well with them. I've got a British sense of humor, deadpan, which doesn't work well on French television,
No.
but it works well on Chinese television. And I must say, what I felt there was that my dearest wish had come right, which was that the British, who have played a great part in world history, never mind imperialism and all that. I'm not, as I say, no isms.
Never mind the slave trade. Never mind the opium wars.
Never mind. Let us forgive and forget. But let us start on a new deal, okay? And let us accept that China has her own originality, her own creativity, her own way of looking at things. And the British have done it. And so they've made a very good deal for themselves with Hong Kong.
I'm going to ask you to stay here forever after the break. You're a beautiful woman, but you're not wholly Chinese. In fact, you are what was called then?
Eurasian.
Belgian?
No, we were called mixed blood, mongrels, half-caste, dirty yellow bellies. We were kicked around. Our fate, the fate of a Eurasian girl, was to be a prostitute. Ha.
And you escaped it, obviously, but how did you escape?
I didn't escape. I fought it.
You fought it?
That's different.
Because your attitude towards the development of your life has been something you fight from within, not from outside. Is that right?
I fight from within, yes. I don't join groups or movements. I just say, well, I don't think so, and then I go ahead.
What about what's his name? My favorite Chinese statesman, Deng Xiaoping.
Deng Xiaoping. Oh, he's not a Eurasian. He's from my province of Sichuan. You see, I do identify emotionally with the Chinese, and the reason probably was that it was so highly unfashionable. When I was 12, 13 years old, we all had to pass. You know what the word pass means? It means becoming white.
Oh, yes.
Oh, God. Well, I went the other way, or tried to. So there you are.
You were passing Chinese instead of passing white.
I was trying to pass Chinese, yes.
That must have been difficult then.
It was difficult. And therefore, during the war, I went back to China. I was for 2 years in Belgium to study medicine, and I gave up my scholarship and went back to China and started as a midwife in my province of Sichuan. Now, Deng Xiaoping comes from Sichuan, Zhu De comes from Sichuan. Many of the great generals of China and the great poets came from my province. My province only has 100 million people. We are 1/10 of China. Only 100 million. It was a small province.
4 times the population of Canada.
Maybe.
Yeah.
And what was very interesting was that I identified so much. Probably because I was, during the war, instead of serving tea in teacups, to nice ladies and all that sort of thing, I went and became a midwife in the countryside. And so...
And when you became a doctor, you became a free enterprise because they tried to run you out of town, did they not?
Well, no, that was later.
That was later.
Yes, a lot of people do try to get rid of me in one way or another, but somehow I stick. But to come back to Deng Xiaoping, he is a typical Sichuan man. And he's immensely pragmatic. I'm told that when he was a young man, a young student who went to France, he was the only guy who, at the port, had everybody's luggage placed and identified with their names, and everybody standing by their luggage, the other students, I mean. Whereas, you see, everything else was in a confusion. And he also operated a small printing press, which, of course, at that time was illegal. But, you've got to be illegal in order to become legal one day, may I say. All dissidents have always been right in the end, and he did that. And he's always been the kind of person who thought in a way with both feet on the ground.
Is that an old Chinese proverb? I'm going to use it. All dissidents have always been right in the end.
It wasn't very accomplished to do that because of Confucius. I think the Chinese Communist Party sometimes made mistakes, not because it was communist, but because it was so Confucian. Not confusion, but Confucian. Yes, it always had to stick by so many rules, and half the rules I could find again in Confucius. And I do not like...
Except for one.
Which one?
Power comes from the battle of a gun.
Oh, well, Confucius would have said the same thing.
He would have said the same thing.
If he'd had a gun.
Now,
I'm sure.
You got away from me on Today's China Changing when I said criticisms about the Diet Pepsi-Cola Society.
No, I do not criticize. I do not like everything that's said. For instance, my granddaughter, who seems to have inherited some of my dissident genes, she's just been to China all by herself, pack on the back, for 3 weeks with the family. And she also disliked terribly the kind of, Walt Disneyland that they are making of the Ming tombs and so on.
Who would want to see that?
Yeah, but I'm afraid that it's very difficult. They are trying to make money, the Chinese. They need foreign exchange. If we don't have foreign exchange, we can't buy your machines. In order to buy your machines, we must make foreign exchange. In order to make foreign exchange, we must please a lot of people who aren't as noble as you are.
Not me. But you're still giving us terrible problems in logs and lumber. We think, you see, innocent, naive Westerners, if we can only tap the market of China, we can sell every piece of lumber we can produce.
Oh, no.
But the Chinese say, we don't want your little sticks. We want the whole tree, and we will use 99% of that tree while you will throw away 50% of it in Canada.
It is quite true that, as I said before, I think the Chinese will evolve their own economy by adapting from capitalism, whatever they think works. But meantime, yeah, maybe I'm going to make mistakes. Maybe people are going to drink Coca-Cola. But so what? So some people were horrified with the Coca-Cola, especially Americans. They said, what, are you becoming American? I said, look, Hong Kong has been getting water from Red China throughout all the time when the Americans said that even if you had a duck that came from China, you couldn't eat it in Hong Kong because it was a Red China duck. And yet they haven't become communist. I don't think that Coca-Cola is going to turn anybody into a capitalist. It's just going to rot some teeth, perhaps, because they are drinking too much of it and not brushing their teeth afterwards. That's all.
Political question. Surely the day must come when, I shall not say Formosa, Taiwan becomes part of China. When will that come? Who will lead them into that?
Aha. Now, do I reveal or do I not reveal official secrets?
You reveal. You reveal.
Well, to begin with, in America and even in this country, you have a lot of Taiwan students and Chinese students, and they are coexisting in universities, and they are the best of friends. That's the next generation. And we are all Chinese together, as I have kept on repeating for 30 years, for 40 years. We are Chinese first and everything else afterwards. I think we must let the Chinese work that out. And they're doing it very successfully. For instance, there are writers' seminars at which writers from Taiwan come, and nobody does anything to them except if they go back to Taiwan, so they live in Hong Kong.
You know, we always think of the Chinese as the most, in their own way, quietly sophisticated, civilized people with a history going back, what, 10,000 years?
Let's say 5,000.
5,000 years.
Let's be modest.
How do you treat your minorities? Do you treat them well?
That's a very good question, because to be quite honest, I have been studying that problem for quite a number of years. I must say that in old China, when I mean old China, I don't mean Mao Zedong China,
No,
I mean way back
old
before
China.
1949. They were very badly treated.
You're talking about the Boxer Rebellion China.
Yeah, that kind of thing. I'm talking, don't call it rebellion. How can it be rebellious for a people to rise up against their oppressors?
I saw Charlton Heston and David Niven, and they called it the Boxer Rebellion, where brave white men marched through hundreds of thousands of million Chinese peasants.
Yeah, shooting them all the way. Okay, but that doesn't matter.
No. Look, the Enchantress, we haven't talked about the Enchantress. Will you stay and take some phone calls? One segment of telephone calls.
Sure.
What an opportunity. Han Suyin, Dr. Han Suyin. After the break. Hans Suyin is autographing the Enchantress this afternoon between 1 and 2 at Duthie's, and at Woodward's at Oak Ridge between 4 and 5. I have a strong suspicion you will be swamped.
Well...
Are you feeling strong and forthright today?
Well, I'm quite accustomed to floods in Sichuan province.
Okay. Oak Ridge Woodward's 4 to 5. Duthie's in downtown Vancouver this afternoon between 1 and 2. And we dealt with Formosa. I'm going to take some calls to you. Go ahead to Dr. Han Suyin.
Hey, good morning, Jack. The scheduling of your two guests, the scheduling of the two guests was perfect.
Why?
Well, you had George Watts on first, and now you have Han Suyin. What a breath of fresh air, and to hear a voice of reason in this province. But she was saying, just one little quote from her when you were talking about the Chinese Revolution, and she was mentioning printing presses. She she said, for something to become legal, it has to be illegal at first. And I think what's happening with the Mears Island thing here in our Aboriginal peoples is exactly what she's alluding to.
And she also said all dissidents turn out to be right in the end.
Not all, really. I should say, let's say about 60%. Is that a good average? 65. 65.
Let's use the Junior's quote. Oh, no truly loyal subject of the chief magistrate.
Well, Jesus Christ was a dissident at his time.
I thought for a moment you were swearing.
And so was Mao Zedong.
Go ahead from Alberni.
Oh, yes. I'm glad to say that the previous caller stole my comments from me, and I would just like to comment on the wise remarks of Han Suyin, and I appreciate you having her on the show. And I'd like to just say again that I think she's absolutely right, that when there's a cause that you believe is just, you have to struggle for it, whether the legal system stands up for your rights or not.
On either side.
That's right. It applies. If there's a just struggle, you have to
got to fight. Go ahead, please.
Morning.
Morning.
Hans Suyin, I would like to tell you that of anybody that I've read, you have inspired me all through my life since I first read your books. That not only just from what you have taught us through the personal struggles that you went through. I know that whenever I hit a low point where I think that I can't get going again, I think, what would Han Suyin have done? That was books, The Crippled Tree and The Birdless Summer, but also from such a deep understanding of China that I think you've contributed so much to anybody who's read your books. And those that haven't, I strongly urge them to read it, because you give such a tremendous depth of understanding of where China has come from and where it's trying to go to. I can't wait to read your next book. Thank you.
Thank you. My next book is 18th century, but it's very important from one point of view. It shows how China began to close up then.
Mm-hmm. That's the nicest call I've had on the air in years, that last call from that woman. Go ahead, please.
Hello?
Yes.
Jack, I've got a question for your... Hello?
Your television sound is up, old boy. Hold on, please. Go ahead, please.
I wanted to ask Dr. Han Suyin what she thinks of all the Hong Kong money that's coming into Canada and the United States to escape the communists when they could very well use that money over there.
Yes, I know there is some money coming to Canada. I do not deny that there are some people who are frightened. For instance, there are some people in France who are frightened. And we know very well in Switzerland that 30 billion went out of France in 3 weeks when Mr. Mitterrand became the elected president of France. So what? That doesn't prove anything. What is real proof is that at the moment, the market in Hong Kong has gone up and up, the Hang Seng Index, which is the Dow Jones, and that many, many people are encouraged.
Good. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Jack.
Morning.
Jack, I'm an old China Han. My wife's a third generation, and I'd like to thank Dr. Han for appearing. She's a beautiful person. Could I just ask her one question?
Of course.
We grew up together at the same time. I think you went to school in Shanghai, did you not?
No. I went to Yanjing Daxue, Yanjing University, which was the snob university, but I paid for it, so I don't feel a snob.
Good for you. May I compliment you, Dr. Han? It's a pleasure. My wife's a third generation from China, too.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank
Good to hear
you.
you.
One word, please, to the Chinese community here.
Yes, I have many, many friends among the Chinese community, and I know some of them will be angry and sore because I did not telephone them. But I arrived very late last night, and I'm going this afternoon after signatures. So please forgive me, but I will come back and see just you next time.
Duthie's 1 to 2 this afternoon, Oak Ridge 4 to 5 at Woodward's, that is. And my thanks to a very gracious, brilliant lady.
Thanks to you, Jack.
I'll be back with Joe Cosman. Poor Joe's been waiting all morning after the break.